Paying the price for fixing the price, British Airways is hit by record fines. The airline must pay £270 million after admitting a secret deal on fuel charges with Virgin. Tonight, the illegal price-fixing conspiracy that's left BA in disgrace.
The crimes committed by British Air are among the largest and far-reaching antitrust conspiracies that we have ever detected.
The fines were imposed by the authorities here and in America, where BA has been accused of ripping off its customers. Virgin blew the whistle on its rivals, so escapes any penalty. We have the full story. Also on the programme. A question of trust. ITV is accused of misleading viewers about the moment of death of an Alzheimer's sufferer. Search for truth. The all-American hero who was failed by his country's military.
The handling of the circumstances surrounding Corporal Tillman's death could only have added to the pain of losing a loved one.
And Back to the Future, the infamous DeLorean car set for a controversial return. Good evening. British Airways has been landed with 2 jumbo-sized fines from either side of the Atlantic for fixing fuel surcharges in cahoots with Virgin Atlantic. One was from our Office of Fair Trading, the other from America's Department of Justice. Over there, they said passengers flying between Britain and America had been ripped off. The fines totaled £270 million for the carrier, once known as the world's favourite airline. But there was perhaps the world's biggest reprieve for Virgin, because they blew the whistle on the cosy arrangement. They did not get fined. Chris Shipp is outside BA headquarters at Heathrow tonight. Chris.
Mark, it was a blatant breach of competition law, and the fine imposed on the bosses here at British Airways headquarters today was enough to vaporise a large chunk of their company's profits. Over 18 months, BA and Virgin Atlantic ran a cartel on the fuel surcharge, and today that landed British Airways with a surcharge all of its own. It was the great fuel fix. British Airways and Virgin Atlantic effectively setting the fuel surcharge between them. Today it landed BA with a sky-high fine, £270 million. Both transatlantic carriers were equally culpable, but it was Virgin which blew the whistle. It meant it got off scot-free, while BA was left to carry the can.
I've no intention of defending any of these actions. I condemn the actions unreservedly. It's a huge regret to me that a very limited number of individuals within British Airways ignored our very clear and very comprehensive policies on competition law compliance.
The fuel surcharges were imposed on long haul 3 years ago. At least 6 times since then, BA and Virgin colluded on the price. The pair were found to have acted illegally between August 2004 and January 2006. Investigators looked at all tickets for long-haul passenger and cargo flights. In that time, the fuel surcharge rose from £5 to £60, an increase of 1,100%. Today, BA was fined on both sides of the Atlantic.
The crimes committed by British Air are among the largest and far-reaching antitrust conspiracies that we have ever detected. Virtually every American business and consumer was impacted by these crimes.
It is a very strong demonstration that we are going to enforce the law vigorously and effectively, and it should send a very strong message to business leaders.
Richard Branson's airline watched as his arch-rival got stung by some of the biggest fines in corporate history. Virgin, however, escaped with an apology.
Virgin Atlantic and Richard Branson apologised to customers for what has happened in the past. We do not believe that any passengers have been overcharged. They are not paying higher total ticket prices.
2 airlines, but only one soaring fine. Little wonder tonight it's British Airways whose tail fin is between its legs.
So, Chris, what's the legal position here? Will people be able to claim compensation from BA?
Well, Mark, that is the interesting point tonight, but remember, British Airways was fined not for the fuel surcharge itself, but for the way in which it went about it in collusion with Virgin. There are currently in the United States around a dozen or so of these lawsuits that have been filed, and British Airways has set aside even more money than that $270 million it was fined today to meet any of the costs arising out of this. But both the bosses here at BA and even Virgin Atlantic were both at pains to point out today that customers weren't charged any more as a result of this collusion, and it was indeed, they say, a fair way of passing on to the customer the rising and sometimes falling price of oil. We learned something else about competition law today, and that it is very unfair, particularly when both firms are at fault. But one other thing we did see today was that if British Airways were the ones that held up their hands and said, look, this is going on, the boot tonight really would have been on the other foot.
All right, Chris Shipp, thanks very much indeed. ITV has ordered an inquiry into whether the promotion of a moving documentary about an Alzheimer's patient involved deception. Initial publicity for the programme claimed it showed the moment Malcolm Poynton died. In fact, he died 3 days later. As Angus Walker reports, it's the latest controversy threatening to undermine public trust in television.
Love is patient. Love is kind.
No, you're hurting me. Stop it.
This is a clip from the promotional film for the powerful and moving documentary due to be shown on ITV, charting the final years of Malcolm Poynton. A talented and loving man. The cameras were there to highlight that Alzheimer's disease can kill. The programme was billed as showing for only the second time in the history of British television a dying man's last seconds of life, filmed with his family's permission. Sad but not exactly true. The film shows Malcolm Poynton slipping into unconsciousness. He actually stopped breathing 3 days later. Behind the scenes, it's clear there was some kind of communication breakdown between ITV and the programme maker, which hinges to a large extent on the wording of a press release issued to publicise the documentary. One ITV press release says, in moving scenes, Malcolm is surrounded by his family and Barbara strokes his head as he passes away. That has since been amended to read, he is surrounded by family and Barbara strokes his head as he drifts into unconsciousness. ITV has issued a statement saying it is correct that Paul Watson, the programme maker, approached ITV on Monday to suggest a clarification in the film about the moment of death. When ITV did establish later that day that the death was indeed some days after the end of the film, we immediately agreed with Paul that a clarification needed to be made. The boss of ITV, Michael Grade, has also issued a statement repeating his well-publicised view that there should be a zero-tolerance approach to deliberate deceit on TV and promising action in this case if necessary. Paul Watson, a respected filmmaker, has defended what he set out to show in agreement with Malcolm's widow.
Neither of us set out to make a film to show Malcolm when he goes like that. How voyeuristic could that be? How disgusting could that be? And because I haven't got it, and because somebody somewhere in a press office has told people that it would be there, did they see my film? Did they study my film? Did they write for my film? I certainly didn't tell them what to say.
Malcolm's widow Barbara says the film sensitively shows Malcolm's final conscious moments and then cuts to a still frame of her husband.
The message is loud and clear. No matter when Malcolm died, he died. And he died from Alzheimer's, and this wretched disease is now the second killer. And so I felt that what was in the film was appropriate, but I can see how somebody watching the film and not in the know might take it that that sudden still image is the moment of death.
Sadly, this row overshadows the real reason for filming, which was to highlight the harrowing effects of Alzheimer's disease. Angus Walker, ITV News.
So Malcolm Poynton's widow says she considers the man behind the documentary a very honourable filmmaker. And Paul Watson does have other controversial projects to his name. Chris Rogers analyses the way he works.
These are Paul Watson's words about his own work. We all know what manipulation is. It's called editing. Editing is where you play God, and if you don't play God truthfully, there's no point. Of his masterclasses for his younger filmmakers, he says, "I encourage them to be a bit naughtier." Deborah Kinsland, who helps him run the filmmaking masterclasses, told me her colleague is often misunderstood.
The films are like a portrait. If you see a portrait that's a painting, it's not accurate in the way that a photograph is accurate, but it may tell a deeper truth.
And he would never intentionally edit a film in a certain way for it to look as though something happened that didn't actually happen.
That's not my understanding of where he's coming from at all.
In his 1974 series, The Family, he set out to reveal the typical working-class lives of Terry and Margaret Wilkins. But tabloids claimed the filmmaker manipulated their behaviour and precipitated their marriage breakup. 33 years later, Margaret told ITV News a different story.
We've been good friends ever since we did that programme.
But did it cause her marriage breakup?
They don't know what went on. And it would hurt people if I were to say just what the problems were. But they were personal, they were not anything to do with the filming.
He can have a bloody birthday. Of course he can.
In a similar series filmed in Australia, critics claim Watson had effectively set up the family to feed British prejudices about Australians. Today is not the first time Watson has had to appear on ITV News to hit out at claims he misleads an audience.
The public has a right to know that what they see is genuine, that the people who are represented know it's them.
Watson intends to create intense debate, but only over his subjects' lives, not over how he filmed them. The latest television bungle, this time over Alzheimer's, has once again served to create controversy over both. Chris Rogers, ITV News.
Still to come tonight, the heist in action, dramatic pictures of Britain's biggest cash robbery. And back from the mists of time, why the controversial DeLorean car could be making a comeback. But first, the story of an American sporting hero who went to war against Iraq and was killed by friendly fire shocked America. The initial cover-up about how Pat Tillman died shamed its armed forces. Today, the former American Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld faced questions about that cover-up. He said Mr. Tillman's family hadn't at first been told the truth, and that must have added to their pain. Neil Connery reports.
He was an all-American hero. Pat Tillman traded in his multi-million-dollar lifestyle as a football star to serve his country in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. But in April 2004, Corporal Tillman was killed in Afghanistan. The US military initially said he was killed by enemy fire. In fact, he was killed by friendly fire, and it took 5 months for the truth to emerge. The US Army has now censured a retired 3-star general for deception. But what exactly did the then Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld know about it? He appeared before the congressional hearing to face some searching questions.
I ask you, sir, most respectfully, do you think that the Tillmans received the truth? And I ask all of you, do you think there was a cover-up?
I don't know how many investigations. Some people have said 5, some 6, some 7. But every single one of them has suggested that it was badly handled and errors were made, but in no instance has any evidence of a cover-up, to use the phrase you used, been presented or put forward.
But he admitted Pat Tillman's family had been badly let down.
The handling of the circumstances surrounding Corporal Tillman's death could only have added to the pain of losing a loved one. I personally, and I'm sure all connected with the department, extend our deep regrets.
These hearings also looked at the case of Private Jessica Lynch. The US Army claims she fought heroically until she was taken by Iraqi forces and then rescued from hospital by American troops. But the myth was far removed from reality. Once again, then, America's military finds itself under fire on the home front over its ability to tell the truth. Neil Connery, ITV News.
In southern Iraq today, a British soldier was killed by a roadside bomb. The soldier from the 2nd Royal Tank Regiment was on patrol in Basra when the attack happened last night. His family has been told. On the day Jean-Charles de Menezes was shot dead by police in July 2005, Scotland Yard told the public it suspected he was a suicide bomber. As ITV News later revealed, Mr. de Menezes wasn't wearing a bulky jacket. didn't run away and hadn't vaulted the ticket barrier. Tomorrow's official report into the shooting will criticise Scotland Yard's top anti-terrorism officer for being deliberately misleading. Juliet Bremner reports.
For the first time since a young Brazilian man lost his life, an officer based here at Scotland Yard will be publicly criticised. I understand that the head of counter-terrorism will in effect be accused of failing to disclose everything he knew about the Stockwell shooting. More than 2 years after Jean-Charles de Menezes was shot and killed by armed officers as he sat on a tube train, an official inquiry will criticise the way police handled events after the botched surveillance operation that led to his death. It will accuse this man, Andy Hayman, who's head of counter-terrorism, of deliberately misleading his boss by failing to tell him that they may have shot the wrong man. But the report accepts that Britain's most senior policeman, Sir Ian Blair, knew nothing of the cover-up. At this press conference, the Commissioner indicated that they got the right man, rejecting the idea that he'd ignored a police challenge.
I need to make clear that any death is deeply regrettable. But as I understand the situation, the man was challenged and refused to obey police instructions.
At a briefing later that evening, Andy Hayman makes no mention of suspicions they've shot an innocent man. He's thought to have told investigators he was waiting for official confirmation of Jean-Charles de Menezes' identity. Nearly 24 hours later, police confirm they have shot an innocent man, but make no attempt to correct the impression he was acting suspiciously. They fail to contradict media reports he was wearing bulky clothing and had vaulted over a ticket barrier. The family of 27-year-old Mr. Menezes say all they've ever wanted is to know exactly what happened, and for those who misled the family to be held accountable. Although it may seem that Andy Hayman has been singled out for criticism, he still has a great deal of support both from fellow officers and in senior government circles. There's a feeling he's been made a scapegoat after a decision was made not to discipline any of the 11 officers directly involved in the shooting. Juliet Bremner, ITV News, Scotland Yard.
Now to the teenagers who use it. The social networking site Face Party seems a harmless way to make friends and swap gossip and photos. Yet ITV News has discovered that the owners of the site have already been warned they must do more to keep young users safe. Here's Chris Choi with a third part of his investigation, Predators and Paedophiles, an online investigation.
British youngsters posing naked. Youngsters registered as under 18. This is the controversial world of Face Party. We've learned that the site has received warnings from a Home Office panel about the risks it could pose to children. I asked the former head of Scotland Yard's paedophile unit to help me investigate.
It can't be right that adults should be allowed to trawl this website to find people who are describing themselves as children.
The site's terms state that Face Party does not allow posting of photos that may be considered pornographic, yet we found large quantities, searchable by anyone who has a credit card. Many indecent photos are posted by people claiming to be just 16 or 17.
If this guy is 16 years of age, he is a child, so we're getting into the realms of the criminal law.
Indecent images of under 18s are illegal, yet there appear to be some on this site. Despite its fears of a risk to children, the Home Office panel hasn't ordered any changes at Face Party. In fact, it doesn't have the power. Virtually nobody does, because this industry is largely self-regulating. Face Party told us it monitors its site for users under 16, but I tested its monitoring by logging in as 16, but then giving the age of 14 in my profile. Monitors failed to act.
It's a free-for-all, and at the moment we've got young girls, in a sense, in very pornographic and sexually explicit situations on the site, and if there's nothing to regulate that, well, where does that go?
The people at Face Party say they thoroughly check to ensure no indecent images are posted by those under 18.
They will try and upload them,
but they won't get onto your site.
We will remove them before they go live onto the website.
But we've seen those kind of images from people whose stated age is under 18.
I mean, I haven't seen any images.
So I showed him one on his own site.
How can that picture from somebody with the profile age 16 be on the site? How could that have happened?
Generally, I mean, someone could have slipped on this button here, which actually validates the images through.
But we found a few of them. I mean, it wasn't a one-off.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to comment without obviously looking into it.
Face Party is confident its checks are better than those recommended by the Home Office's panel, and the way the internet is regulated, or unregulated, there's nobody who can tell them otherwise. Chris Choi, ITV News.
For the first time, we got a terrifying glimpse into what it was like being caught up in Britain's biggest robbery. CCTV pictures of the Securitas hold-up last year shown in court have been released today. They show masked men wielding guns, threatening staff and kidnapping the depot manager. Isla Traquair reports.
A terrifying moment. A masked gunman captured close up during Britain's biggest ever robbery. Just one of many images snapped during the hour-long raid last February. One of the gang members dressed as a policeman aims his gun at the 14 staff in the Securitas depository in Kent. Then they're ordered to put their hands up and lie on the floor. This is the first time the jury at the Old Bailey has seen the events unfold on camera.
Convinced they'd done enough to disguise their identities, the robbers did nothing to disable the cameras in every corner of the secure complex. The court was told what the police have done now is compile the images in a chronological order so we can see the robbery from start to finish.
The first images show them passing through the 14-foot steel fence with kidnapped manager Colin Dixon, who begged his staff, "Do what they say, they've got my wife and kid." The robbers' lorry gets into position, then they pass through the airlock and enter the main depot. This is them going back and forth loading the lorry with £53 million, half of which has never been found. The 7 men and 1 woman on trial deny all charges relating to the raid. As the trial continues tomorrow, the identities of the masked raiders may remain a mystery, but now there are no secrets about how their operation was carried out. Even their moment of escape, when they're believed to have shouted, "Let's rock and roll," has become a piece of courtroom evidence. Isla Traquair, ITV News, the Old Bailey.
Look at the markets now, and the FTSE slumped by 109 points to 6,250. The Dow Jones, though, closed on 13,362 points. That's up 150. And tonight the pound is worth $2.03, up just a fraction of a cent. It was the Dream Machine offering the dream of jobs in Northern Ireland in the depressed 1980s. The DeLorean sports car factory sucked in huge amounts of taxpayers' money and still went bust after just 2 years. But now production may start again, albeit in America. Lawrence McGuinty now on the car that's gone back to the future.
Italian design, French engine, British chassis. The DeLorean was a mongrel from the very beginning, and some said a bit of a dog to boot. But the Belfast-built car must have had something, because now, 25 years after DeLorean went bust, it's going back into limited production.
Makes going to the shops for a newspaper quite an event. Yes, I'm not sure I've ever driven it and not had something said to me or photographs taken. So yes, you can't be a shy shrinking violet in this car, unfortunately.
They started making DeLoreans in Belfast in 1981. In 18 months, 9,000 or so rolled off the line, but then they went bust, and John DeLorean ended up in court charged with trafficking cocaine, charges he beat on grounds of entrapment. But then this happened.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
Back to the Future guaranteed DeLorean would live on, if only as a Hollywood time machine. From these distinctive gull-wing doors to the unique stainless steel bodywork, this is much more than a car, it's an icon. And it's an icon that's becoming more and more popular, because very soon a company in Texas is going to be handcrafting 25 of these DeLoreans every year. Lawrence McGuinty, ITV News.
You only just got out of that. Tonight's main news again. British Airways has been fined a record £270 million for plotting to fix the fuel surcharge on long-haul flights. And BA is also making the headlines in tomorrow morning's front pages. The Daily Telegraph says the airline has the worst record in Europe for lost luggage. It claims British Airways is forecast to lose a record 1.3 million bags this year. The Independent shows one of 500 drawings submitted by children to the International Criminal Court as proof of the atrocities committed by Sudanese forces in Darfur. It says the images emerged by chance when a peace campaigner handed the children paper and crayons. The Daily Mail says drivers stopped for speeding, dropping litter or failing to wear a seatbelt could be put on a national database for life. It claims trivial offences could lead to DNA samples being taken under new police plans. And The Sun leads with the signing of a 9-year-old by Manchester United. Rain Davis, who comes from Australia, is already being called the new Wayne Rooney. There we are. Those are tomorrow's headlines. That was tonight's news. Coming up next on ITV1, after the national weather, the news where you are. But from me, good night. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.
The ITV National Weather is sponsored by E.ON, the energy behind power gen.
Hello again. Well, over the next few days or so, it continues to feel more like summer with lots of warm sunshine to come. As we work our way towards the weekend, things should be settled and fine. But if we take a look at tomorrow's details, it's a much better day for the borders in southern Scotland. Plenty of sunshine around there. And further west into England and Wales, some nice sunny spells through tomorrow morning. Into the afternoon, we have a band of showers, and they'll work their way eastwards across many parts of England. 1 or 2 heavy ones pushing eastwards through the day, and a few showers further north into the afternoon tomorrow. Temperatures, well, still around average or just above for the time of year, generally in the high teens. In the warmer slots in the southeast tomorrow, it could get up to around 22 Celsius. Feeling pleasant in that sunshine. Good night, sleep tight.
The ITV National Weather is sponsored by E.ON, the energy behind power gen.
Good evening, I'm John Gilbert. This is London Tonight. The hunt is on for ram raiders who attacked a railway station in Surrey. It's thought their target was the cash point machine, but it's not known if they got away with anything. Liz Wickham reports.
In the leafy heart of the Surrey stockbroker belt, about the worst thing that happens is failure to find a parking place at the station. But Hazelmere commuters are not so audacious as to abandon their vehicles inside the South West Trains ticket office. Yet at 2:30 this morning, robbers rammed this four-wheel drive Daihatsu through the station's front doors, knocking them flat, and then swerved left to crush a cash point machine, now lying in pieces on the pavement. Locals are not used to this kind of thing.
Hazelmere is a haven of peace and, you know, dignity. So to have something like this happen is a real shock.
We've been talking about the police. The ones we have are very good, but to my mind we don't have enough of them. And of course Hazelmere is relatively crime-free. And I've always felt that when you look at it, by having a small police force, it's encouragement for the criminals to come here.
The Daihatsu was abandoned while the robbers used a second vehicle to get away.
The Daihatsu was actually stolen either yesterday or in the early hours of this morning from a town of Rake, which is on the Hampshire-Surrey border, and then driven down into Hazelmere. British Transport Police are appealing for witnesses from anyone who may have seen the vehicle stolen in Rake and anybody who witnessed anything in the Hazelmere area at that time in the morning.
An alfresco ticketing operation was soon set up. And throughout the afternoon, the Daihatsu was slowly manoeuvred into a position from which it could be extricated. Well, what went so boldly in has now gradually been winkled out, and what remains for British Transport Police to do is try and find the cheeky ram raiders before it's too late. Liz Wickham, London Tonight.
A demolition worker has died after apparently being crushed by a falling beam on a South London building site. The accident happened this afternoon at Elephant and Castle, where preparations are underway for a 42-storey development. This report from Sharon Thomas.
From the 20th story of a neighbouring building, it's clear to see the devastation that cost a man his life. Emergency services were called just after 2 o'clock this afternoon to this demolition site on the Walworth Road. A construction worker died at the scene. It's believed a beam fell from the top floor of the building, crushing him.
It was like, went really, really quiet, came outside, saw several of the guys looking really white, looking really upset, asked them what had happened, because the one thing you notice is the silence, and I asked them what had happened, and they were upset, and they said that somebody, you know, one of their co-workers had been killed.
This evening, demolition work on this site has been suspended indefinitely while the Health and Safety Executive carry out their investigation. The work is being undertaken by a company called 777 on behalf of Multiplex, who built the new Wembley. They have ambitious plans for the site. There's to be a 42-storey residential building here, 30% of which will be affordable housing for key workers. It's a groundbreaking eco-project for the area, complete with wind turbines on the roof. A project that's now suspended indefinitely while an investigation into today's tragedy is carried out. Sharon Thomas, London Tonight, Elephant and Castle.
Now let's have a look at some more headlines tonight. A third man has been arrested over the murder of former champion boxer James Oyebola. He was seized today at Gatwick Airport. Mr. Oyebola, who was 47 years old, died after being shot last week at a Fulham nightclub when he asked 3 men to stop smoking. Another man is still being questioned after being arrested yesterday. A 19-year-old was released on bail at the weekend. A 14-year-old boy is amongst 6 people arrested following an armed robbery at a Chiswick jewellers. 2 men wielding hammers burst into the shop yesterday afternoon and grabbed around £50,000 worth of diamonds. The jewels were recovered after a police chase. And Heathrow's owners today asked the High Court to ban campaigners from protesting against the airport's plans for expansion. BAA want an injunction which would block a so-called Camp for Climate action from being set up at the airport for 7 days later this month. Their critics say it's legal bullying. The ruling is due later this week. Right, let's have a look at the weather with Chrissy Reedy.
Tomorrow's going to be much warmer. London weekday weather, sponsored by Tops Tiles.
Hello, it was a lovely, fine evening across London and the South East. Tonight, no major problems. Long, clear spells. As you can see, staying dry. Very light winds are not as cool as last night. Out of central London, lows there of around 13 degrees. Tomorrow, the best of sunshine will be during the morning, as by the afternoon, the cloud will start thickening up, especially in the west, thickening up as well in places for some light and patchy rain. Further east, hopefully drier and brighter. Not as warm as today, but not bad. Highs of 21 or 22 degrees. Good night to you.
London weekday weather, sponsored by Tops Tiles.
Well, that's it from the London team tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, starting with bulletins in GMTV and London Tonight